Okay, so hi, good evening, everyone. I guess I'm audible.
Good evening, sir.
Okay, so how's everything going? Linux install हो गई सबकी? Is your Kali installed? Let me know. Yes. Okay, let me share the link for the quiz as well for today. तो वर्चुअल बॉक्स भी ठीक है, बट कभी कुछ दिक्कतें आ सकती हैं, तो उनका ध्यान रखना. At what kind of problems are coming? ठीक है, तो there might be some issues that you might face in certain um, things. ठीक है. So virtual box is also okay, no issues in that. ठीक है, पहले से इंस्टॉल कर रखा है तो कोई ऐसी बात नहीं है, वुड वर्क फाइन. अगर कुछ बीच में इशू आता है तो बताना, वी कैन डिस्कस इट आउट एंड सॉर्ट कर लेंगे, क्योंकि बहुत बार मैंने देखा है दैट देयर आर लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स दैट आर हैपनिंग. Oh great, you got your first bounty. How much bounty you got? ना आया. ओके, ग्रेट ग्रेट ग्रेट, दैट्स ग्रेट. पेपाल का अकाउंट आपको बनाना पड़ेगा, ठीक है, तभी काम चलेगा. गेट अ पेपाल अकाउंट सिंपल होता है, बस उसको सेटअप कर लो, ठीक है, वो हो जाएगा फिर. राइट. सो नथिंग मच. not able to connect with the camera. Isn't switching the camera as of now. Okay, let's go with the back camera only. पैन कार्ड नहीं है पेपाल केवाईसी के लिए, इसमें टाइम लगेगा. तो यार ये तो करना पड़ेगा. राइट. वंस यू हैव स्टार्टेड योर बाउंटी, यू हैव टू गेट ऑल दीज थिंग्स डन. ठीक है. सो मेक श्योर कि इसको जल्दी से करवा दो, बिकॉज यूजुअली काम तो ऐसे ही होता है. यू नीड टू गेट अ पेपाल अकाउंट फॉर दैट. ठीक है. विवेक ऑल्सो ह्यूज कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस टू यू वंस अगेन. ठीक है. एटलीस्ट इट्स स्टार्टिंग. आज इतना है तो कल हो सकता है इसके अंदर एक या दो जीरोस और लग जाए, fortunately, right? And I heartily believe so you will be able to do that. Okay, so bounty क्या होती है? What is bounty? Bounty is nothing but you actually go around with certain these kind of things, like certain vulnerabilities in some web applications. You report to the parties, and the parties basically give you some you know money on that. That is the point, basically reward on that. इस बाउंटी के लिए आप कुछ हेल्प कर सकते हो. सी आई हैव अ पेपाल अकाउंट एज फॉर हैकर्स विला, राइट. सो आई कैन हेल्प यू आउट इन दैट. राइट, अभी भेज रहा हूँ कुछ. राइट. सो आई कैन हेल्प यू आउट इन दैट. सो जस्ट एक बार मेरे को मैसेज करना, ठीक है. यू कैन जस्ट पुट योर नंबर, आई कैन मैसेज यू. राइट. So we'll be able to connect and talk about that. ठीक है. सो उसमें कर लेते हैं. आई हैव अ इंडिविजुअल पेपाल अकाउंट एज वेल, तो उससे हो जाएगा. Here's the link for the quiz. Go around with the quiz. 3 minutes for the quiz, and we'll start with the session. copied your contact, right? I'll basically go around with it. ठीक है? I'll get back to you on WhatsApp only. ठीक है? Hope so the number is on WhatsApp that we have shared. Quiz link again. Just a sec. Here it is. Go around with the quiz. अच्छा क्विज में क्वेश्चन ऐसा है दैट वी हैव नॉट कवर्ड येट ठीक है which is the last question. Let's see who can get it right. The people who are using Linux might get it right, so go around with that. 2 minutes more. Let me know your score once you have finished. Five out of five. Great, great, great. Four. Okay, that's also okay. Then we have. Okay, chats बताते रहना how much score you are getting. ठीक है. And I'll be going ahead with today's session. तो हम लोग देखो लिनक्स के ऊपर ही प्रॉपर बात करने वाले हैं. We'll be going on with Linux only and we'll be going around with that. One more minute for the quiz. उसके बाद we'll be starting. So see, uh, we'll be talking about the commands today. ठीक है. तो if you have installed Linux, right, जो पूरे कल steps बताए थे अगर आपने follow किए हैं, you will be able to simply just open your Linux. ठीक है, जैसे मैंने कल open करके दिखाई थी. So you just have to go to that Linux, open it, and follow certain commands with me. ठीक है, तो साथ साथ में commands अगर follow कर सकते हो तो try to follow them. ठीक है, and बढ़िया से समझ भी आ जाएगा और एक बार practice भी हो जाएगी. If you might be facing any error, I'll be able to resolve that error as well side by side. Right. So I'll just go around and show you that, right? So I'll be opening my virtual machine, right? VMware over here. Let it open. Yeah. So we have our VMware over here, and in this VMware, you can see that we have our Kali Linux over here. So I have two versions of Kali as of now. You can see that. I have one Kali 2023.3, and then I have Kali 2020.3. So a 4-year-old version of Kali Linux and a last year version of Kali Linux, right? So each year, Kali Linux people uploads 4 variant of Kali. Point one, which basically goes in January, February, March. Then point two, which comes out in July or June. Then point three, which usually comes out in September, October, and point four, which basically comes out by the end of December. Right. So abhi what you have downloaded is 2024.4. ठीक है. And usually 2023.3 or the point 3 editions are very much optimized and fine for use. So that's why I love using point 3 editions. And I do not like to upgrade every time, right? So if I download a version, if I like it, I do not upgrade it. I just simply upgrade it from inside, but I do not go and hop onto the latest edition of that operating system because of certain convenience that I might feel over there. So सबके लिए convenience अलग होगा. ठीक है. Sorry for the bad camera lighting conditions. अभी um, सेट नहीं हो रहा है वेबकैम राइट सो I'll be basically setting up tomorrow but हाँ काली के अंदर I have 2020.3 as well. I do like 2020.3 because it is really great, right? And it also runs on the same kind of system over here, and it's really great that we can just simply run it like this, right? So ultimately this particular Kali over here 2020.3 is also really good and it's really stable and has those applications which the latest Kali does not have. So that is why I do have this old edition as well. because certain apps that do not work or get crashed in 2023 works on 2020, right? So right now I'll be going on to 2023.3. I'll be just switching it on, and it would show you something like this, right? Now this particular thing is called as grub or grub, ठीक है? तो इसको grub या grub कहते हैं, and this is the bootloader, right? This is the bootloader. Bootloader का simple मतलब क्या हुआ? There are two words, boot and loader. So boot matlab to switch it on, and loader matlab to load that thing. So it loads the boot, right? It basically loads the booting process. Booting process matlab किसी भी operating system का switch on होना, right? That the new operating system is basically switching on. That is just booting of it. So we are booting our operating system, and this particular screen or this particular thing, software piece of code or script is actually loading my operating system. So it is asking, what do you want to do? Do you want to go into Kali, or do you want to go into some advanced options for Kali? So if you go on to the first option, which it would automatically pick if you do not click or press any keyboard button, it would automatically pick the first edition or the first option. And then ultimately, if you want, right, within just 5 6 seconds, it would give you, right. So you can go around and click on this advanced options. Here these options present you the recovery mode, where if you have forgot the password of your Kali or anything like that, you will be able to basically reset over here, right? So ultimately, these are two main things that you can get over here. I'll basically boot into my Kali normally as we do. So once I click on my Kali over here, right, you would see that my mouse would disappear. I'm right now hovering my mouse or just using my mouse, but it usually disappears. You can see it would go into my Kali and would disappear and then comes out of a different screen, right? So ultimately you can see that this basically becomes black inside and white over here. So why? Because this is right now the Windows cursor, but as soon as it goes inside, it is basically my cursor that is in my virtual machine. And if I click inside, I can come out over here, but if I put it on the like full screen mode, it is not very much possible to directly come out of it, right? Either you can just hover on the top, right, and you can basically do minimize or such things over here, or either you can just click on control, ठीक है? तो बेसिकली कंट्रोल की कंट्रोल ऑल्ट जैसे होता है, तो जैसे ही मैं कंट्रोल ऑल्ट दबाऊंगा, this particular cursor would come back to my windows, right? So abhi it is inside my Kali over here. So I'll just type in the Kali, the default username and password for this, and ultimately I will be getting logged into my Kali machine. Right. As soon as I get logged into my Kali machine, it would open Firefox over here, and उसी के साथ साथ it would open a terminal window, right? So ये जो terminal window है, this is where I would write all the shell commands, and उसी के साथ साथ this particular Firefox is open because मैंने इसको setup कर रखा है. I've already set it up that whenever my PC would open or whenever my Kali boots up, I need to basically have this open, right? That is the thing. ओके, फिर से ये फिर से बता दीजिए, साथ में हम लोग भी कर लेते हैं. मैंने सिर्फ जस्ट ओपन किया है, राइट अंकित? आई हैव जस्ट ओपन दैट बूट लोडर में जाकर मैंने इसको सिर्फ बूट किया, सिंपल, दैट्स इट, राइट? सो नथिंग मच. इफ यू हैव everything installed, just boot your Kali and come over to this particular screen, right? So basically you might see a different kind of background. So I have set it up like this, right? So simple सा ही है. How have you followed the step yesterday? कल जो मैंने steps बताए थे उसके अंदर मैंने साफ साफ बताया था कि कैसे इंस्टॉल करना है, कैसे उसको सेलेक्ट करना है. If you have done it, just click on load it and it would load. Simple यही तो करना है, यहाँ पे पावर ऑन करना है एंड पावर ऑन हो जाएगा. That's it. उसके अलावा थोड़ी ना कुछ. It's pretty easy. इतने सिंपल क्वेश्चंस कुछ करने के बाद पूछा करो यार, करने से पहले मत पूछा करो. अपलोड रिकॉर्डिंग ऑफ यस्टरडे, यार इट्स नॉट इन माय हैंड, इट्स ऑल इन द सिस्टम्स हैंड, ठीक है? अगर कुछ भी होता है तो ट्राई टू आस्क गौतम सर and other people, right? Because I don't know how the recordings are directly getting uploaded there. So if it's not recorded, it's not in my hands, right? So recording हो रही है, that is what I can assure, right? Because I can see that. Okay. So let's go around with this, right? So you might see any other background of it, right? And there are a lot of backgrounds that your Kali would give you, right? You can select any of them. Default, this would come over here, right? उसके अलावा और भी कुछ default है जो आते हैं. right? So you can just select any of your thing. So I basically try to select the minimalistic one, which can be, very much minimalistic, right? So ultimately that can also be done over here. So there are like multiple kind of, these kind of things that you can see over here, right? Like lot of, um, these things. You might have seen this one in a lot of, videos on Instagram as well, right? So yeah, that is the thing. Let's go with this, a very minimalistic look. So we have all these kind of things over here, and yeah, we can just change the background. We can do a lot of things and just simply randomize it, do whatever I want, right? So yeah, and ultimately my Kali is also right now working directly on my system, right? And yes, ultimately it's consuming all the hardware that I have given it, right? So 4 GB RAM ये ले रहा है, 4 GB RAM के साथ साथ it is also taking the 4 processors. Not every time it would take all 4 GB RAM, right? Because most of the time it could also take like 2 GB RAM or a single GB of RAM, right? Because Kali does not require a lot of RAM over here. And ultimately, if I go to my task manager, you can see if I go in my performance, it is my out of 16 GB, I am using just 10.5 MB, 10.5 GB as of now. So ultimately, 8 GB से अगर ऊपर का है तो यू कैन यूज इट ऑल्सो आई एम ऑल्सो ऑन जूम राइट नाउ ठीक है सो आई एम ऑल्सो प्रेजेंटिंग दिस पर्टिकुलर स्क्रीन तो उसमें भी जा ही रहा होगा ये सो यू कैन सी हाउ मच जूम इज कंज्यूमिंग जूम इज ऑल्सो हैविंग अराउंड अबाउट 500 MB ऑफ रैम तो 1 GB तो ये अपना ही ले रहा होगा लगभग लगभग 500 MB तो दिखा ही रहा है सो round about 9 GBs you can understand 9.5 GB fairly I'm using over here for my all the setup over here. Now the point is this particular setup, if you have 8 GB of RAM, obviously a little bit of lagginess you would feel. So अगर है तो 8 से 16 कर लेना, that would be a really really good thing because 16 GB of RAM is really good. If you have it, it's really really good, right? So here is my Kali over here, and in my Kali you can actually see there are a lot of things going on, right? There are a lot of things going on. If I open a terminal window, right, this particular terminal window would open like this, right? And ultimately this terminal window contains everything that you would need, right? So ultimately that all the things that you can do with your mouse and keyboard you can do over here. So the first thing that I would go around would be explaining you about certain configuration of this thing, that what is this particular thing. फिर हम कुछ basic commands के बारे में बात करेंगे, and then we would basically update our Kali and we'll just try to understand how it works. Right. Is two logical processor enough for running VMware? Uh, two नहीं, you need to have more, right? So दो लॉजिकल प्रोसेसर्स तो आज की डेट में बहुत ज़्यादा कम पाए जाते हैं, एटलीस्ट 4 लॉजिकल प्रोसेसर्स तो हर एक के पास होते हैं. What is your laptop? Like which is your laptop? It's pretty old, I guess. Because two logical processor used to come with third generation, fourth generation CPUs. If it's a newer CPU, obviously it would have more logical processors, right? Please write all the command in the chat also. ठीक है, लिख देते हैं साथ साथ में, right? But I can I send a document over here in the chat? Screenshot a file. Yes, I can send a file. So let me just share a file with you that contains all the A to Z command list. So that's a zip file. So you can also follow that when you will be learning or practicing on your own. थोड़ा सा easy हो जाएगा, ठीक है. So in the meantime, I'll be sending that as well. Okay, Ankit? अच्छा तो ये अपना काली है over here that you can see, right? Now the point is there are various things that are going on in this Kali machine, right? You can actually see that we have this Kali written, then a symbol over here, then again a Kali written, then we have a tilde sign, we also have a dollar sign over here, right? There are multiple things going on over here. Now this particular thing is called as a shell, where I can write some shell commands and ultimately all these things. So the point is we would basically go around with this thing and we'll basically try to understand that what is happening over here. Right. So उस चीज़ को हम लोग यहाँ पे properly समझने की कोशिश करेंगे कि यहाँ पे currently हो क्या रहा है. So in this particular thing, you can see that we have our, this kind of thing. अब ये जो काली लिखा है, राइट, दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग दैट यू कैन सी ओवर हियर, राइट, सो दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग दैट यू कैन सी काली इज रिटन ओवर हियर। अब ये काली आपका एक्चुअली यूजर नेम बताता है, राइट, सो दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग एक्चुअली टेल्स व्हाट इज योर यूजर नेम राइट नाउ, राइट, सो बेसिकली दिस पर्टिकुलरली टेल्स योर यूजर नेम। एंड उस यूजर नेम के साथ साथ यहाँ पर मेरे को ये बताएगा कि व्हाट काइंड ऑफ होस्ट इज करेंटली लॉग्ड इन, ठीक है, तो मेरा होस्ट फिलहाल कौन सा है, एंड दिस वुड बेसिकली माई होस्ट नेम और द नेम ऑफ माई पीसी, ठीक है। So this is basically my post host name and this is the username over here. और ये बीच में ना @ सिंबल होता है, so this is a @ सिंबल जिसको मॉडर्नाइज कर रखा है बस, और कुछ नहीं, ठीक है। so if it's not modernized it would simply be a simple @सिंबल, and ये मॉडर्नाइज किया हुआ है so that it could look cool, right, otherwise it's a pretty simple username tag, that's it, @ बना हुआ है वो, उसके अलावा और कुछ नहीं है, ठीक है। So it's like username @host name, username @ the PC name. That is it. That is basically written over here. Now the point is that the username is Kali for now, and the host name is also Kali. PC का नाम भी काली है और मेरे username का नाम, मेरा user का जो नाम है वो भी currently काली है यहाँ पर. And ultimately @ of symbol is in between, which can be modernized to any particular symbol. Like आप अगर कोई emoji लगाना चाहते हो बीच में fire emoji or anything kind of that to look cool, that also can be done. Right, then we have this tilde sign. So this tilde sign actually represents the home folder location, ठीक है, ये बताता है करंट यूजर का होम फोल्डर लोकेशन क्या है। सो वट एवर विल बी द होम फोल्डर लोकेशन फॉर माई करंट लॉग्ड इन यूजर, दैट वुड बेसिकली बी टोल्ड बाय माई this particular symbol, right, so it is basically the home folder location for my uh, पीसी और फॉर माई काली यूजर, राइट। सो अल्टीमेटली अभी क्या है, ये यूजर नेम जो भी लॉग्ड इन है, दिस काली यूजर दैट इज करेंटली लॉग्ड इन, राइट, दिस पर्टिकुलरली इसका जो होम फोल्डर है वो यहाँ पर विजिबल है मेरे पास। तो द होम फोल्डर फॉर माई काली इज /home/kali, right, so ultimately this would basically be redirect me to /home/kali, right। so अभी ये समझो दिस इज द लोकेशन, जैसे विंडोज में वी हैव CDE, here in Kali Linux or here in any kind of Linux, you do not have CDE partitions. You just have one particular location starting with slash, and उस slash के अंदर जो home folder है, that is basically the folder where all the users are there, and उसके अंदर the Kali user that is currently logged in, and इसके अंदर हमारे सारे के सारे folders और files listed होती हैं where we have stored like my documents, my desktop हो गया, उसके अलावा my photos, my music, जैसे होता है ना, just like that you have all the things over there in your home folder. So this is basically tilde is basically the shortcut to represent the home folder of current logged in user. हर logged in user का जो होम फोल्डर का लोकेशन है दैट इज डिफरेंट। फॉर एग्जांपल kali user has a different location for home folder, and a new user if I create it might have a different location for its home folder, right? So ultimately you need to once you log in with that particular user, you would see that the tilde sign would automatically represent the folder, the home folder of the user that is logged in, ठीक है। तो जो भी लॉग्ड इन यूजर होगा उसी का होम फोल्डर यहाँ पे दिखेगा, and then ultimately this particular sign $sign, right, this represent that you are a non-rooted user or a non-sudo user, ठीक है। So this simply represents that you are a non-rooted user, right, so it's basically a non-sudo user, right। Non-sudo user or non-root user is basically a user which does not have a lot of access, or basically all the access of my PC over here or my Linux over here, right? So if this symbol would have been a hash instead of dollar, it would basically define as the root user. So if it's a hash, it would define as the root user. If it's a normal user, right, it would show as a dollar, right? But if it would have been a root user, the name of this Kali wouldn't have been there, right? यहाँ पे Kali @Kali ना लिखा होके root @Kali लिखा होता, right? Now a question should be basically in your mind कि अगर यूजर का नाम ऊपर लिखा है, if the name of the user is shown above, then what is the need of this dollar symbol to be there, right? Why do we see dollar symbol to identify if it's a root user or a non-root user, right? Why? Because see, uh, in my Kali, I can see the name of the user over here who is currently logged in, Kali user, but Normally, when you hack into a PC, you would not see that what is the actual user that is currently logged in. It could be any particular user. So it could be any, it could be any particular root user or a non-root user. It would not show you this whole command line, or this would not show you this whole thing over here. It would only show you the dollar symbol or the hash symbol. So that way you have to understand that have you hacked into a root user or a non-rooted user. That is what you need to understand, right? Now to understand what is a rooted user and what is a non-root user, we need to understand the hierarchy of Linux users, right? So to understand the hierarchy, on the top we have the root, right? The main king of my Linux. This is the person who can access each and every folder, each and every command, each and every file of my Linux. This is the main administrator user of my Linux, and it's called as root, right? And it cannot be changed. The name of the root user cannot be changed. The root user is there in all the versions of Linux, right? And as a hacker, my motive is to take the access of the root user, right? So I'll first of all be taking the access of a normal user. Then I have to basically take the access of the root user, right? So ultimately, how it is actually defined is that you have a root user over here, and below the root users, you would be having groups, right? Certain groups would be there. For example, group one, and you would be having group two, then you would be having group three. So there would be certain groups that would be over here, and these groups would have certain members or certain users in it. So group one might have a user over here, group two might have a user, group three might have a user. There are certain users in every group. So let's say we have a user one over here, user two here, user three here. We have a user four in group two. We have a user five in group three. We have a user six in group three. So ultimately, this is the hierarchy of my Linux. You have a root user, below root you have the groups, and in the groups you have certain users, right? So currently I have Kali user set up over here, ठीक है? और Kali के नीचे जो group का नाम है, that would also be Kali. Why? Because in Linux, whenever you create a new group or whenever you basically do the things, right? जब भी आप यहाँ पे कुछ करते हो, right? Ultimately, यहाँ होता क्या है कि यहाँ पे हमारे पास एक रूट यूजर बनता ही बनता है, राइट? सो रूट यूजर वुड बी देयर, राइट? एंड इफ आई टॉक अबाउट माय काली ओवर हियर, सो व्हाट वुड हैव बीन हैपनिंग इज दैट इस रूट यूजर के नीचे एक ग्रुप बना होगा, उस ग्रुप का नाम भी काली होगा, राइट? द नेम ऑफ माय ग्रुप वुड ऑब्वियसली बी काली, एंड देन द यूजर नेम ऑफ माय यूजर वुड बी काली एज वेल. Why? Because ultimately there are two things, right? Whenever you create a new user in Linux, a new group is already created with its name, right? So if I create a Sanjay user over here, or if I create a user called as Ankit, let's say, right, it would also create a group called as Ankit, right? Then you can just delete that group or shift that Ankit user to any other, shift that Ankit user to any other group if you want to, right? So ultimately, right now, what is happening that my a group has been created and the group name is also Kali and the username is also Kali, right? And that is why we are seeing the username Kali over here, right? And ultimately, if I would see the name of my group, it would also be the Kali as only, right? So this is basically the root user. The root user is the main user, and ultimately below that is a group, and in group you have the users, right? So a user is the main person, and ultimately, if a user one creates a file, right, then ultimately the file would have three types of container, right? Because owner would be your U1 because U1 is the one who created the file, right? So ultimately, who are your group mates? Your group mates would be U1, U2, and U3, right? So U2 and U3 would be your group mates. Then ultimately all the other, right? Basically all the people who are different over here would be your U4, U5 and U6. Now these people would be others for you, right? Because they do not either belong in your group and they do not basically go around with these kind of things, right? Basically it's not in your group as well and it's not actually there as well. So that is why these people are basically not in your you know, group. So that is why U4, U5, and U6 would be others for the file. The owner would be U1, and U2 and U3 would be my group mates. So there would be three kind of permission: a set of permission for the owner, a set of permission for the group mates, and a set of permission for others. ठीक है? तो ये हायरार्की होती है हमारे लिनक्स के अंदर. This is the hierarchy of the users in my Linux, right? So a system admin is basically given the task of root user, and ultimately he would basically check out all the other users, how they're basically working, what they're doing, and ultimately he would manage all the groups and he would manage all the things in a particular network, right? So that is how the things are basically working in my Linux as of now. Okay, so this is what we can understand. A rooted user would always have a hash symbol, right? For example, if I just log into the root user over here, you would see that it would basically become root at the rate Kali and the symbol would change into hash, right? And all the other users are non-rooted users, so it would show dollar symbol for all the others, right? And ultimately, all the other users that you can see rather than root, right, might want to sometimes run something as root, right? For example, root has all the permissions, right? And let's say you want to run a command which needs special root privileges, right? Let's say, for example, there is a command IP. Now, IP command is the command that gives you the result for what is your IP address and all the networking tantrums, right? So basically, it would give you the output regarding all these kind of things that we used to see in IP config with my CMD command. So ultimately, if I type in IP command, it would give me the result, right? But let's say that IP command actually needs a rooted privilege, right? My IP command would need the rooted privilege. What is how basically just give the root only root user can basically access this particular command. Let's say U1 also wants to access this particular command IP, also wants to run this command IP, right? How would he run this particular command? He would need certain permissions from root, right? Now, uh, now the point is that to do this, root user has created a file, right? And the root user, the file that has been created is called as the sudoers file, right? So the file would be called as a sudoers file. This is a file called as sudoers, right? And in this sudoers file, root user would be having the names of all the users that would have the permission to run which command and to run on which location, right? So for example, the Kali user would be specified over here with all the specifications that what kind of command my Kali can run with the root permissions, and ultimately what kind of commands, what locations, where to run these commands, and the limited number that how many commands can be accessed by my Kali user. So everything would be there in the sudoers list. And for all the users, right? If I create a new user, I have to add that user to the sudoers list as well, right? So ultimately, if Kali is there and it has permission to run all the commands at all the location, right? So ultimately, my Kali would have the permission of the root as well, right? Because Kali is having the permission to run all the commands at all the locations. That particularly means that Kali is identical to a root user, right? So ultimately, right now, that is what is happening with your Linux. Your Kali is actually having all the permissions in your Linux right now. So ultimately, this Kali user, right, can basically do everything at every location. So ultimately, what I can do is I can run that IP command, but before that IP command, I have to type a keyword, and that keyword is actually sudo, right? So I have to basically type in sudo over here. So if I just type in sudo before the IP command or before any command, that means I want to make my super user do this command. The super user run this command. So what is my super user? Super user is root, right? So root is the main super user, right, of this particular thing. And ultimately, with using sudo command, I am just telling my, Linux that, hey, Linux, I'm running this command with the help of root privileges, right? So then what the Linux would do, it would see in the sudoers list that do you have the access? If you have the access, sure, you will be able to go forward and run this command. If you do not have the access, it would basically show you a particular line that would say you are not in the sudoers list. This incident will be reported, right? And a report will be generated and will be sent to the root user, which the root user can review to check in that if there is any other user which is trying to log in or which is trying to basically run a certain command, right? So this is actually how all the system works, right? So if I show you this thing, ultimately you can see if I just uh, switch to my root user, right, you would basically see that this is my root user as of now. So once I am connected to root user over here, you can see that the hash symbol is being coming over here, and the location has converted from that that tilde sign to the slash home slash kali, because the tilde sign does not represent or I can say this folder does not represent a home folder for my root user, right? So if I go to the tilde sign, right, if I just type this, right, you can see that I am now in the tilde sign, and this tilde sign is actually pwd, right? Pwd command means print working directory. अभी छोटे छोटे commands that I am doing. cd means change directory. To change your directory into this thing, basically change the folder या फिर किसी folder पे double click करना. So it is basically change the directory. So as soon as I'm changing the directory to tilde sign, it takes me to the tilde directory or the home directory of my root user. And pwd is print the working directory, right? So if I just click on or type in pwd or print the working directory, I will be taken to slash root. So slash root is the home directory for my root user, and for my Kali user, the home directory is slash home slash Kali. And the tilde sign will only represent the will only represent the home directory of the currently logged in user. For example, the current logged in user is root, so that is why the tilde sign is this. And if I exit from root, right, now I'm back to Kali. So now the currently the current directory, right, would be which directly, let's check it out. So pwd, and you can see the current directory is the tilde symbol, that means slash home slash Kali. So tilde symbol will always represent the home folder for the currently logged in user. So Kali is currently logged in, so the home directory is this. And when the root user was logged in, the home directory was this, right? अच्छा sudo su क्या होता है? Sudo su जो मैंने ऊपर डाला, su is basically the command for switch user, right? So it is basically switch user, not superior. It is basically switch user. ठीक है? So I'm switching the user, right? And I can type in any particular user over here. For example, I have a Sanjay user. I can type switch user to Sanjay, and this would ask me the password of Sanjay, and I will be able to get back to it. I can also just directly connect to root by doing this, switch user to root, and it would ask me the password of root, right? And I will basically become the root user. But because मैंने अभी तक root user का password set नहीं किया है, so I took a different turn. I typed in sudo su, which automatically took me to the root user. ठीक है? So sudo su is a short for changing the root user, or basically for from changing any user to the directly the root user, right? So if you're in the sudoers list, so ultimately you will be directly going to the root user with this particular trick, right? So ultimately that is what I'll type, and I'll be going to the root user, right? So that is the thing, right? The point is that this is how it particularly works, right? So ultimately I have a lot of commands that can work over here, right? So if I just try to basically type in cd would change the directory. But before changing the directory, I want to see in which directory I am currently in, right? So with pwd, I can actually see, okay, I am in slash home slash Kali. Let me also show you this particular folder with graphical access. So in graphical access, you can see that this is what my home folder looks like, right? This is actually what my home folder would look like. And ultimately, the home folder is this particular thing. This is my home folder over here. Have a lot of things going on over here, a lot of folders, a lot of files you can see over here, right? So there are a lot of files and a lot of folders that are currently there. Now, how do I want to, if I want to see what is there in my current folder, I can just type the command ls, As soon as I type this particular command, right, I can see a whole list of files, right, that are basically there in my file, right? So the whole list of files are basically there, and all the files are basically coming, right? Let me make it a little bit smaller, right? And now you can see they're coming in like two formats over here, like two columns. And ultimately you can see that this is a file over here. So all the files that are JPEG or that are photos are coming in aqua, this purple color, right? All the files that are basically folders, not the files basically, but the folders are coming in blue colors, right? And all other files are basically coming in white colors, right? And the files which can be executed would come in aqua color over here, right? So this is a log file. This is not an executable file, right? But these are certain log files that also has certain things. Now I'll tell you about log files and go much further. But you can see ये एक executable file है. Executable files are just normal files which you can click and it would do something. Just like how you have your exes in your Windows. You double click on it and it installs something, right? So that is what I'm having over here. This is a shell script, right? So this is a simple shell script which would work, which would basically write something, or do something, whatever would be written in this script, right? So all these aqua color files are the files that are basically what we can say are basically pretty simple um, executable files. White ones are normal files, and blue ones are my folders. The purple ones are my, these photos over here that you can see. So if blue ones are my folder, I can go inside them, right? So you can see desktop is a folder, documents is a folder, downloads is a folder, right? And you can see that over here as well, desktop, documents, downloads. So how you double click on desktop and you go into the desktop, right? We can do the same thing by the CD command, right? So CD into desktop and I will be directly inside my desktop. So I just have to type this and you can see that right now I am in my desktop over here. So if I am in my desktop as of now, we can simply say that yes, I am in the desktop and ultimately now if I want to see the content of my desktop, I'll do ls once again and now I can see all the content of my desktop. Again, there is an image over here that you can see and there is a executable file. Again, a zip file over here is also an aqua color. Blue ones are the folders, right? And the red ones are also the zip files. Red ones are the zip files which have some password. So this one more new zip, secret zip has the passwords set up over there, right? And then all these particular files are also there, right? Now what you would do in graphical manner, let's say you want to read a file, for example you want to read this password.txt, you would click on it and it would open, right, in a notepad. So it would open in a notepad. That is how you would simply just see this file, see the content of the file, right? uh, and you can edit the content as well. For CLI manner, to check a content of a file, you have to use cat command. So cat command, if you, I just simply type in over here like pass.txt, right? So the name of the command and then basically the name of the file I want to check the content of, press enter, and here is the content of my file that I was basically checking with the notepad, right? So that is how I can work on Linux, right? I can basically type in the cat command and with cat command I will be able to just go around and check out the file um, content over here, right? If I want to change the file's content, I can use nano for this, right? So nano pass.txt and ultimately I can just go around and here I have a notepad that is opened in my दिस टर्मिनल. सो टर्मिनल विंडो के ऊपर ही मेरा जो है एक नोटपैड ओपन हो गया है where I can basically write the things over here and it would save it. Now the point is that ultimately it cannot support mouse. तो आप mouse से कुछ भी करो सिर्फ select होगा और ज़्यादा कुछ होगा नहीं. So you have to basically do all the things with your keyboard. So for example, I write in a content over here, hi, this is my new password file, right? So I basically type in a content over here and now if I want to save it, you can see यहाँ नीचे shortcuts दिए हुए हैं, how do you save it? तो write out के लिए जो shortcut दिया है वो दिया है O symbol and this particular symbol that you can see, a caret symbol, CARET बोलते हैं इसको, and usually it's also XOR symbol or it can also be considered as the power symbol, right? इसको हम power के लिए भी use करते हैं. So this particular up arrow symbol is basically the symbol for control in Linux. So you have to type in control over here, right? So ultimately, if I type in control O, I will be able to save my file over here. So control O would work as control S over here. Now, if you want to basically check out like you want to sometimes find some content in the file, so ultimately you can type in control F to basically check that particular content in the file. For example, I can type control F. Now it would ask what would you want to search. I want to search the word password, so ultimately it would be highlighted like this, right? Your cursor would be placed over here. Then ultimately, if you want to exit, you can just type in control X. So if I just type in control X, it would ask you, do you want to save this file? So if you type in yes, it would save the file, and then it would ask you the name of the file. Do you want to save it over here? Enter, and you will basically exit with saving the file, right? So ultimately with nano, you can actually save that particular file. Now, ultimately, if I do the cat again, if I read the content of this password.txt again, you can see this particular thing has been added, right? So जो काम आप डबल क्लिक करके नोटपैड से कर सकते हो, वही सेम काम मैं नैनो के थ्रू I can do it as a editor over here as well, right? So I can basically edit a file through nano, and I can basically try to read a file through cat, right? Now, nano से file create भी हो जाती है. If I want to create a new file, let's say if I want to basically build a new file over here, so I can just simply write it nano, and I can basically type the name of my new file, whatever I want, right? So let's say I want to create a file called as sunstone, right? Sunstone.txt. So I just typed in nano and type the name of the file. As soon as I press enter, a new file would be created called as sunstone.nano, right? And ultimately, I can just type in anything that I want over here. Hi, this is my new text file, and uh, I will write what ever I want, right? So that is it. Now to save it, I can either type Control O, right? So you can see it wrote 3 lines. So Control O would basically do the save. And once you have saved in, you can just simply Control X to exit, or you can just directly do Control X and then it would ask you whether you want to save it or not. It's your choice. पहले save करो फिर exit करो, या फिर directly exit करो और exit करते हुए save करो. Just your particular wish, right? So if I just type in ls, you can see sunstone.txt would start existing over here. And I can also use the cat command to basically check out sunstone.txt. ठीक है. What you type for clear screen करने के लिए मैंने control L टाइप किया है, which is the shortcut for clear command. ठीक है, ये जो clear command होता है इसका shortcut है control L. If I type in control L, it would basically um, क्लियर द स्क्रीन. तो ये स्क्रीन क्लियर नहीं करता है, सिर्फ आपके कर्सर को ऊपर शिफ्ट कर देता है, दैट्स इट. तो ये मेन चीज़ होती है बस आपकी यहाँ पर, राइट? सो कंट्रोल एल इज द गुड शॉर्टकट विच यू कैन बेसिकली यूज वेन एवर यू आर डूइंग दिस, राइट? विंडोज में फॉर सी एम डी दिस इज सी एल एस, राइट? दैट इज द थिंग. nmap फाइल कैसे करें? अच्छा, नानो फाइल कैसे करें? नानो फाइल सेव कैसे करें? कंट्रोल ओ दबाना है. कंट्रोल ओ दबाओ, इट वुड आस्क यू कि आपका नाम यही है, जस्ट प्रेस एंटर एंड इट वुड सेव इट. ठीक है, लिख कर आ जाएगा रोट दिस नंबर ऑफ लाइन्स, एंड यू कैन टाइप कंट्रोल एक्स, देन यू कैन कम आउट ऑफ इट. ठीक है, तो मैं फिर से करके दिखा देता हूँ. नानो सनस्टोन डॉट टी एक्स टी, राइट? एंटर किया, फाइल में लिखा, सेव करना है, कंट्रोल ओ टाइप किया, इट वुड आस्क यू समथिंग लाइक दिस, फाइल नेम टू राइट. एंटर कर दिया, सेव हो गया, दैट्स इट. ठीक है, समझ में आई बात? कंट्रोल ओ करो, सेव करो, कम आउट ऑफ इट बाय कंट्रोल एक्स, राइट? दैट इज द थिंग. So ultimately, this is what you can basically do, and this is what you can try to practice in your Linux, ठीक है? And ultimately, you will be able to work on this particular thing, right? अच्छा, एक चीज़ मैं और बता देता हूँ, that Linux के अंदर आप अपने सारे पुराने कमांड्स को साइकिल कर सकते हो. So all the previous commands that I have run so far, obviously not all, but the last 1000 commands that I have wrote so far would basically be saved in my history, right? So ultimately, this is the history feature of my Linux. so that if you want to run a same command again, you can just simply use the up arrow button, and you can just simply try to go into all those previous commands that you might have run so far, right? So up arrow button, down button, दोनों से ही cycle हो जाते हैं. Also, if there is a file, you can try to type टैब टू कंप्लीट इट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैंने सन लिखा, अब इसके बाद मुझे पूरी फाइल लिखने की पूरे फाइल का नाम लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. आई जस्ट हैव टू प्रेस टैब बटन, एंड प्रेसिंग द टैब बटन वुड बेसिकली कंप्लीट द होल फाइल, राइट? फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैं यहाँ नई नई फाइल बना लेता हूँ, राइट? नई फाइल अगर बनानी है और आपको उसके अंदर लिखना नहीं है तो आप टच से भी बना सकते हो. The nano say if you create a file, it would open that file for editing, right? For example, nano hello.txt, so it would open that file for editing. But अगर आपको कोई फाइल बनानी है which you just want to create but you do not want to write in it, so you can just create it with touch command, right? So touch hello.txt and hello.txt will now start existing over here, but nothing is written in hello.txt. Now you can see that hello.txt is existing over here. Now let's say I want to cat hello.txt, so मैंने यहाँ cat लिखा, he लिखा, and then I would just press tab and it would auto complete the file name. ठीक है, तो tab बटन दबाकर you can also auto complete the file names or auto complete the overall command. These are certain shortcuts that are there in all the CLI modes, be it the CLI mode of your this Cisco Packet Tracer or your Windows or your Kali V or Visual Studio Code, anything. All the CLI has this feature of auto completing the command and ultimately cycling the previous commands as well. So अभी मैं यहाँ पे cat करूँगा hello.txt को, because I have not written anything in it, तो यहाँ पे कुछ भी नहीं आ रहा है. ठीक है, so अभी हमने कौन कौन से कमांड कर लिए, एक बार कंक्लूड कर लेते हैं. वी नाउ नो PWD. ठीक है, मैं एक बार इसको चार्ट में लिख देता हूँ साथ साथ. हमने अभी PWD पढ़ा, राइट? द फर्स्ट थिंग विच टेल्स मी अबाउट. अच्छा, लेट मी आस्क यू गाइस. ठीक है, PWD से हमने क्या क्या पढ़ा, व्हाट इट डज. You can open your mics or you can just write in the chats. What does PWD do? I'll write the commands and you'll answer. ठीक है, तो कंक्लूड कर लेते हैं. करंट डायरेक्टरी प्रिंट करता है. ठीक है, देन वी अंडरस्टूड अबाउट LS. व्हाट डज LS डू? LS क्या कर रहा था? ls basically list all the commands. ठीक है, show all files what are present in the current directory. cd command, what it was doing? cd command क्या कर रहा था? cd command change directory, jump into any particular directory you want, right? Cool. Then we understood about sudo command. Sudo क्या कर रहा था? sudo, for example, I can type in sudo over here like this, sudo, and then I can basically switch su कर रहा था. ठीक है, sudo is basically the super user do. I can use sudo with any command like sudo ip, sudo apt, sudo any other thing. So for example, I can use sudo ip and it would show me all the IP addresses over here, right? So sudo ip a, and it would basically a means all, so it would basically show me all the interfaces like loopback, Ethernet 0 with my IP address, what is the IP I'm connected to, ब्रॉडबैंड आईपी क्या है इसका, ब्रॉडकास्ट आईपी क्या है इसका, आईपी वर्जन 6 क्या है इसका, तो सब कुछ मेरे को दिखा देता है यहाँ पर, राइट? एंड द मैक एड्रेस एज वेल इज ऑल्सो शोन ओवर हियर, तो सब कुछ दिख जाता है मेरे को, राइट? सो सूडो यूज क्यों करते हैं? सूडो इसलिए यूज करते हैं ताकि हम रूट परमिशंस के थ्रू कोई कमांड को रन कर पाए. ठीक है, तो बेसिकली एक्सेसिंग, नॉट फॉर एक्सेसिंग रूट फाइल्स, बट बेसिकली एक्सेसिंग द कमांड विद रूट परमिशंस. ठीक है, रन एज एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर करते हैं ना विंडोज में, राइट क्लिक करके व्हेन यू डू लाइक रन एज एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर, दैट इज व्हाट सूडो इज. ठीक है, बिना सूडो के कर सकते हैं, जैसे आईपी कमांड तो बिना सूडो के भी काम करेगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ आई डू इट ओवर हियर, यू कैन सी दैट आईपी कमांड कैन वर्क इन विदाउट सूडो एज वेल, बट देर आर सर्टेन कमांड्स जो सूडो के बिना काम नहीं कर सकते. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ आई वांट टू अपडेट माय काली ऐप अपडेट, इट वुड सिंपली से नो, आई कैन नॉट डू इट बिकॉज ऑफ यू डू नॉट हैव द परमिशंस, राइट? परमिशन डिनाइड. तो वहाँ पे मेरे को सूडो करना पड़ता है, राइट? सो सूडो ऐप बेसिकली अपडेट, नाउ इट वुड बेसिकली हैपन. एप्ट क्या होता है इसके बारे में कल बात करेंगे, ठीक है? बट एज ऑफ नाउ दिस इज व्हाट इट इज, राइट? सूडो क्या करते हैं? सूडो बेसिकली गिव्स यू द एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर परमिशंस और द रूट परमिशंस टू रन दैट पर्टिकुलर कमांड, राइट? टू ऑप्शन इज देयर, येस और नो. व्हाट आई टाइप? येस टाइप कर दो या फिर वाई टाइप कर दो. ठीक है, हाँ, रूट में बिना सूडो के अपडेट कर देता है, क्योंकि रूट ऑलरेडी सूडो है ना, मतलब रूट तो ऑलरेडी सुपर यूजर है, तो इसलिए दैट इज वाई वो उसमें आपको सूडो वूडो की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती। ठीक है। सो अल्टीमेटली सूडो के बाद एस यू व्हाट एस यू वॉज डूइंग। एस यू से क्या हो रहा था? एस यू कमांड हमने देखा, switch user. So it was basically switching the user from one user to another, right? And then ultimately we also saw the command touch, right? We saw the touch command. What touch was doing? Create a file, right? So it could basically create a particular file. And then I can use nano, right? Nano command can be used to basically open or edit any kind of file over there. ठीक है, तो ये notepad type हो गया, which should open on CLI. The last command which we saw for today was cat, right? So we saw the cat command. Cat command reads the file and basically show it on the screen, right? Nano is for create file. Nano is a file create भी कर सकते हो, but then you have to first of all edit it. If you want to create a file uh, and do not want to edit it, तो touch का इस्तेमाल करो. But if you want to create a file and want to edit it as well, you can use nano. ठीक है. So totally on your wish. ठीक है, इतना समझ में आया? सम ऑफ द बेसिक कमांड्स वी हैव गॉन सो फार. विल बी यूजिंग दिस अपडेट कमांड, या परमिशंस वगैरह फाइल की कैसे चेंज करते हैं, फाइल को कॉपी पेस्ट कैसे करते हैं, मूव कट कैसे करते हैं, वो सब हम लोग रीनेम वगैरह कैसे करते हैं, दैट वी विल बी सीइंग टुमारो. ठीक है, सो विल बी गोइंग ऑन टू विद सर्टेन कमांड्स टुमारो. एंड आज हमने कुछ बेसिक कमांड्स पता लगा लिए हैं. वी हैव अंडरस्टूड सम बेसिक कमांड्स थ्रू व्हिच यू कैन ट्राई टू रन इन द CLI मोड and try to understand how it works and try to tinker in on your Linux. ठीक है, तो जिनका अभी भी इंस्टॉलेशन नहीं हुआ है, right, please complete it by tomorrow so that you can also just try to practice all these things while we are doing the things. When I click Y, it's not closing automatically. वो फाइल सेव करने के लिए पूछ रहा होगा ना अंकित? Once you have clicked on Y, it would ask you the file name. एक बार एंटर दबाओगे तो उस फाइल का नाम सेव हो जाएगा. ठीक है, सो इट आस्क्स यू वंस अगेन कि क्या इसी फाइल के अंदर सेव करना है. ठीक है, सो दैट इज द थिंग. कंट्रोल ओ कर रहे हो, वाई या यस या नो पूछेगा, सिंपल फाइल का नाम दे दो, एंटर कर दो, दैट्स इट. कंट्रोल एक्स से एग्जिट कर दो. डायरेक्टली कंट्रोल एक्स दबाओगे, सो इट वुड फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आस्क यू वेदर यू वांट टू सेव दिस बफर. यू विल क्लिक ऑन वाई, देन अल्टीमेटली इट वुड आस्क यू क्या इसी में करना है, एंटर, एंड यू विल बी इट सेविंग एंड एग्जिटिंग इट. ठीक है, तो दीज टू आर दी ऑप्शन. ओके, सो वी विल बी मीटिंग टुमारो एट सेम टाइम. एंड हम लोग जो है आगे क्या करेंगे, हम लोग आगे बेसिकली यूज़ करेंगे हमारे सम मोर कमांड्स, राइट? सो अल्टीमेटली वी विल बी गोइंग ओवर टू दैट. फाइल नेम फर्स्ट में ही दे दिए थे, वो फिर से पूछता है. देखो अंकित, मेरे को मैं बता देता हूँ फिर से, सो दैट योर डाउट्स गेट क्लियर. स्क्रीन पे देखो. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर मैं यहाँ नैनो करके अंकित डॉट टी एक्स टी देता हूँ, ठीक है, एंड इफ आई ओपन इट, मैंने यहाँ पे लिख दिया हेलो दिस इज अंकित फाइल. ठीक है, एंड अल्टीमेटली मैंने इसको सेव किया, या कंट्रोल एक्स कर रहा हूँ. आप कंट्रोल एक्स कर रहे हो, कंट्रोल ओ कर रहे हो, पहले ये बताओ. आर यू सेविंग इट और डायरेक्टली एग्जिटिंग फ्रॉम इट? ए डॉकलॉग से कर दो. मैंने बात करी है फाजिल, आई हैव सेंड अ प्रपोजल. ठीक है, तो अगर होता है तो मंडे से हम लोग उसको करेंगे. गौतम सर विल बी गोइंग ऑन टू दैट थिंग. ठीक है, अच्छा ये हो गया है. ठीक है, ये हेलो दिस अंकित फाइल मैंने लिख दिया. नाउ आई विल जस्ट टाइप इन कंट्रोल एक्स. ठीक है, मैंने कंट्रोल एक्स किया तो ये पूछ रहा है सेम चीज, डू यू वांट टू सेव इट और नॉट. मैंने वाई दबाया. नाउ दिस इज आस्किंग क्या इसी फाइल के अंदर सेव करना है, अंकित डॉट टी एक्स टी. इस पॉइंट पे मुझे एंटर दबाना है. मैं जैसे ही एंटर दबाऊंगा इट वुड बेसिकली सेव द फाइल. ठीक है, तो बस रट्टा मत मानना कि पहले वाई करना है फिर एंटर दबाना है. ठीक है, उसको ध्यान से समझना. राइट, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इट इज आस्किंग वेदर टू सेव और नॉट, एंड द सेकंड थिंग इट इज आस्किंग डू यू वांट टू सेव इन द करंट फाइल ओनली. ठीक है, वहीं एंटर दबा दो, दैट्स इट. यू जस्ट हैव टू प्रेस एंटर, नथिंग एल्स. कुछ ऐसा स्पेशल नहीं है. ठीक है, इट वुड सेव एंड एग्जिट. करके देखो, डरो नहीं. ठीक है, अच्छा लेट मी जस्ट शेयर द फॉर्म फॉर टुडे. ठीक है, एक बार मैं फीडबैक फॉर्म भेज देता हूँ, देन वी कैन एग्जिट एंड गो अराउंड. Okay, so just fill the feedback form and then you can leave the session. ठीक है, we'll meet tomorrow at 8:30 only. बाकी times अगर change होते हैं we'll just change or we'll just go through with it with the next session, right? Like from Monday onwards basically. कल हमारा हो जाएगा Friday, right? ओके, बोल देता हूँ मैं वीडियो अपलोड का भी एक बार आगे रिमाइंड करा देता हूँ, सो इफ देयर इज सम लैग इन इट वो भी ठीक हो जाएगा। ठीक है, सो हाँ विवेक, आई आई कनेक्ट विद यू। ठीक है, आई विल कनेक्ट विद यू विद इन सम टाइम, व्हाट्सएप में आपको मैसेज करता हूँ। ओके, थैंक्स लॉट गाइस, विल सी यू टुमारो, गुड नाइट। हाँ गिरिराज, यू लाइक what kind of request do you have? If you're here, मैसेजेस में लिख दो, प्लीज मेक अ ग्रुप। ओके, व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप ना? मेरे पास देखो सबके नंबर्स तो है नहीं, तो आई कैन नॉट मेक अ ग्रुप। व्हाट यू कैन डू इज यू गाइस कैन मेक अ ग्रुप एंड ऐड मी, ठीक है? सो व्हेन यू मेक अ ग्रुप जस्ट सिंपली ऐड मी, और ऐड करने के लिए मेरे को बता देना, आई विल गिव माय नंबर एंड यू कैन ऐड इट ओवर देयर और सेंड अ रिक्वेस्ट टू दैट नंबर, ठीक है? सो यू गाइस कैन क्रिएट अ ग्रुप एंड देन ट्राई टू ऐड मी, ठीक है? उसमें मैं अपडेट्स वगैरह भेजता रहूँगा, फिर सच कोई इशू नहीं है। ग्रुप बना दो फिर मेरे को बताना कल तक, ठीक है? फर्स्ट क्रिएट योर ओन ग्रुप, अगर बना हुआ है तो मैं अभी दे देता हूँ, बताओ। ठीक है, सो कल ग्रुप क्रिएट कर लेना और मुझे क्लास में बता देना, आई विल शेयर माय कॉन्टैक्ट देन, ठीक है? ओके, सो आई विल सी यू टुमारो, कल मिलते हैं, गुड नाइट।